the number 8 on the ball. And that is Jair McCoy. Loses the ball. Cavario White played last year and did admirably. Now here's Cristiano Myers, linchpin at the back last season. Out wide. Does well to shield the ball there, and that's picked up, however, by the number 11 there, Delajahi McCormack. Played a bit deeper last year. Seems he's going to be playing a bit further forward this time. Now here's Ballaz Academy coming forward, long ball over the top, aiming towards that right hand side, unable to find a teammate there. Most definitely looking forward to see some of the newer players that have been added, not just to the squad but into the starting lineup. Of course, players like Miles Hanna, who didn't really get a look in much last season, was predominantly a player that featured off the bench. But not only has he been instituted into the starting lineup this year right from the get-go, but he's also been made captain. Interesting move by the coach there. But now we have Robinho Morgan. 1v1. What is man? Gets past him. Cuts back. Cross comes in. And that's cleared there. And Ballaz Academy coming forward here on the attack. Johnny Campbell lays it off. For Jaheim Harris, who also played last year. Falling to the feet of the number 9, Richard Clark. Scored about 3 goals last season. And was one of the few bright spots in the team going forward. Of course, their main man, however, last year was Daniel Thomas, who just lost the ball, but definitely one of the more exciting players to watch in the competition. A set-piece specialist. Now here's Ballaz Academy down that left-hand side, wins a free kick there. And this could be as early as just the first couple of minutes in this game. As early as just the first couple of minutes in this game, we could have a goal-scoring opportunity for Ballaz Academy. Free kick, of course, to be taken by the aforementioned Thomas, who, as I mentioned before, wonderful from set pieces last year. Free kick comes in to the near post, and that's cleared. Off the number 12, Johnny Campbell. But now here's Daniel Thomas, looking to find Clark, and he's judged to have been offside. Harris, rather, is in an offside position. One of my main concerns last year was for Thomas that despite his skill and his ability on the ball, his amazing passing range and his set-piece ability, he did need to bulk up a bit more. Does seem to have a bit of a leaner frame, but still not as strong or physically imposing as you'd want. But the skill, the talent is undeniable. Oh, and he plays a lovely ball there into the path of Jaheim Harris. He has space and time on that right-hand side. Cross comes in. Oh, Jaheim Harris pounces on it. And Ballaz Academy take the lead. Here to see them, even though they came into this game as favorites, be 1-0 down. Must, of course, make mention of the fact that they are without last year's captain, Jadine Morgan, who was, for me, one of the better players in his position in the last tournament. But they'll have to make do without him. Zaim Kashinro muscled off the ball there. White loses the ball to his number 10 counterpart, Thomas, but ball's won back there. Kevon Adlam, the one retrieving possession for balls, for KFA rather. Here's Lewis. Hannah making a run there, but wasn't spotted by Lewis. Campbell out wide. Seems to be playing in the middle of the park as opposed to out wide last year. And seems White just not on the same wavelength there as his teammate Adlam. And Lewis picks up the ball, plays in Hannah, and as suspected, Hannah is in an offside position. And KFA unable to really get anything going. Of course, they are missing a couple players, as I said before, that were instrumental to how well they played last year. Of course, chief among them being captain Jadine Morgan, as well as, for me, their best player last year, Nikolai Banton, one of our favorite midfielders over on the MG Sports channel. But they'll have to make do. And here's to Ballaz Academy. Of course, just 11 minutes into this one, they're still up 1-0, and must say, as I said before, it does come as a surprise, but they do have the talent to make something more of themselves last year. As mentioned before, they did finish second bottom, and despite the fact that they had some good performances, they never quite were able to put together a consistent run of results. But they'll be hoping to make good on their talent and potential this year, but doesn't start here with Kanye Douglas picking up possession. Out to Kyle Hussey. And back to the goalkeeper there. Devontae Horton. Oh, lovely ball into the space there to find Hussey. Looking for... Oh, he has a shot from a very tight angle. Wouldn't have expected him to have a go from there, but nevertheless forced a save out of Javier Coke there, and that will be a corner kick the way of Ballaz Academy. And of course, as usual, Daniel Thomas will be going over to take. And there, of course, we just had that replay of the chance a while ago. Good save by Coke. Thomas's corner comes in, unable to beat the first man, however, and KFA have the opportunity to counter. However, Hannah and Morgan, they're not on the same wavelength. Here's Kenil Jackson. Kamarly Wesley, of course, a debutant for Ballaz Academy. We'll see how Ballaz Academy play with these new additions. Johnny Campbell. Oh, lovely pass around the corner there by Jeremiah Tapper. Tapper had Jackson there, opted not to use him, and actually the throw ended up going to a KFA player, and Lewis loses the ball rather cheaply there in his own half. And Johnny Campbell eventually loses the ball to Damarian Smith, but not before receiving a throw-in. Tapper's throw into Daniel Thomas, who has some space. Clark playing a bit deeper than last year, but we know he has goal scoring ability. We've seen it on show last season. He was actually their joint top scorer with Daniel Thomas last year. We'll be hoping for an even higher tally this year. And good start from Ballaz Academy, I have to say, really good start. But poor control there. And Miles Hannah on a one-man rampage here, unable to bulldoze his way through the defenders, however, and that will be a throw-in to KFA. Ball to the path of Cavalier White, who loses out there to Campbell. A bit of a blind pass there by goal scorer Jaheim Harris, but nevertheless, KFA come clear. Just about 15 minutes gone in this one, and shaping up to be a really good game. KFA not yet able to really get into it as they'd like. Jair Hay, as I said before, replacing Nikolai Banton in that number 8. He'll be hoping to do that jersey justice, and he actually slips there. Bit of the commentator's curse. But here's Daniel Thomas on the ball. Sees a man out wide, finds him. And it's Johnny Campbell whose cross led to that early goal. And Thomas has actually suffered some blow to the head. And he'll go down. Of course, will be needed some medical attention. And as we just take this break, it's worth noting that Ballaz Academy, as mentioned before, are up 1-0. Must say, comes as a surprise to those who would have watched the competition last year. And must say an even greater surprise is just how big of an impact some of the absentees has had in terms of the style of play. KFA have had some nice passages of play, but the free-flowing football that we're used to from them hasn't been yet on show. Of course, it's a tall task replacing two of your most important players, always going to be, but nevertheless, we're expecting more from them, and in particular from Cavalier White, who's going to be captaining the team this year in place of Morgan, Jadine Morgan, that is. Yet to see really what he's capable of. Truly had some flashes last year, but definitely want him to step up as it pertains to the final third. And seems Thomas is okay, and play will resume shortly. Of course, as another player from Ballaz Academy I'd love to see come into his own this year as well as Connie Douglas. Showed some flashes, nice little touches on the ball, good work rate, but needs to be a bit more assertive and a bit more adventurous on the ball. A bit more like a player like Miguel Joseph, who, for me, my money, was definitely the player of the tournament last year. The young midfielder who, of course, made his debut in the JPL last year. Here's Richard Clark on the ball as the play resumes. Jeremiah Tapper. Jackson. Ball goes back to Devontae Horton. Now here's the debutant, the fellow debutant, Camarco Wesley. Camarley Wesley, rather. Jackson. Good feint there to just fake out Hannah. Tapper's ball, looking for Harris, I presume, but not the greatest of passes. And Javier Cook has time and space to just pick that up and restart position for KFA. There's Myers, who, of course, without his usual centre-back partner, is going to have to be the leader now of that back line, but based on his performances last season, I'd say he's fully capable of just that. Harris, the goal scorer, of course, in this game. Lovely turn by Thomas. Clark, functioning more as a number 8 this season rather than an out-and-out number 9, leaving that role to Harris this year. Morgan, looking for a pass, trying to find White, but not able to. And now here's Kyle Hussey, unable to trap that in his spell, but that will be a throw-in to Ballaz Academy. Yet to see that wing duo of Morgan and Lewis, who were so exciting last year, really get into the game. Of course, big expectations on these two. And I guess that begs the question as to why, with the lack of a real goal threat, they've decided to not include Tyler Faulkner in the starting lineup. He's on the bench today, and I must say, he didn't really start many games last year either, but towards the back end, the last 3 or 4 games of the league season, he started to feature more in the starting lineup, and I must say he was absolutely brilliant. The pace, the strength, the height, and he added 1 or 2 goals as well. They'll need that goal threat, and of course they'll be hoping Miles Hannah can provide that, but considering they're displaying their faith in starting Hannah today, he must have taken a huge leap in training. Ooh, and that's a ricochet off Lewis, and that's gone in the way of Campbell, who fakes out his man there, but the cross coming in is easily cut out by Myers. Jackson to Clark, who loses out there to Keshinro. Also played last year. Out wide to Morgan, trying to find Hannah. He's ahead of Jackson, but Coke calmly collects there, and that will be easily done. And that play ends right there. Kanye Douglas wearing the skipper's armband this year. Jackson, who, as I mentioned before, along with Tapper, new player for Ballaz Academy in regards to playing in this competition. I'll be hoping that those 2 additions can help, not just with their defensive woes from last year, but help them in terms of playing out from the back, something they struggled with at times last year. And I'd venture to even say it's probably one of the most important aspects, not just of modern football, but to the success of this competition. And I'd say bar Cavalier, every single team that did well in this competition last year was exquisite at that aspect of the game, and so they'll be hoping for an improvement there. James Harris, the goal scorer, losing out there in the middle of the park, but just using his strength to win the ball back. And here's Clark, nice little subtle touch to get past Lewis. Pass goes away, but it's in an area where Jeremiah Tapper can recover without being bothered. Not really an aggressive press today from KFA, something that they not necessarily known for, but displayed a bit more with regularity last year. And a lovely recovery there by Rylan Campbell. And he's taken down and screams in agony, writhing around in pain after that challenge from Campbell. And seems he's in some pain, but he's quickly up to his feet, which, given how much he was screaming a while ago, comes as some surprise. But referee blows for just a quick little break. Of course, the temperature here is rather hot and could be rising, and of course it's always advisable in heat like this to stay hydrated, drink as much as water as possible, and of course if it is at all necessary, it is advisable to stay out of the sun at times. And there's KFA still down 1-0, and I have to say it's not looking good for them 23 minutes in, but of course still a lot of time to go. They'll be hoping that they can get some kind of a spark, but I must say those runs in behind from Miles Hannah not necessarily being found by his teammates, inaccurate passing, and of course you could put that down to lacking their talismanic number 8 from last year, Nikolai Banton. But in general, their build-up play, their passage of play, even in the final third, has been poor. They seem to have gone for a more direct approach this year in regards to getting the ball into the forwards as quickly as possible with those line-splitting passes, but they're rather blind and not coming with the accuracy they'd want. And if they're going to go with this approach, I'd opt personally for introducing Tyler Faulkner as early as possible in the second half when the time comes. They're going to definitely need that goal threat. But for now, we turn our attention again to the first half here as KFA will resume play with Cristiano Myers taking this free kick. And out wide, the ball goes to Keyshawn Lewis, who has space on this left-hand side. Gets past his man there. Lovely cross, headed on, and just onto the roof of the net. The ball there coming in from Lewis after he got past his man, Jeremiah Tapper. The cross was beautiful, lofted, evaded just Miles Hanna, but Robinho Morgan was on hand to head it, but couldn't guide it into the net. Instead, landed just on it. There's Camarlo Wesley. Lovely ball there. Trying to find Harris, but that's easily cut out by Zaim Kashinero. Tidy little player. Good calm and composure there by the young goalkeeper, Javier Cook. Gave a good account of himself last year. And good cutout there by Ballaz Academy, and that will be a throw-in to KFA. And it's Jeremiah Hay. Struggled a bit here in this first half. Of course, as we mentioned before, has big boots to fill, and it seems Miles Hanna, after a mix-up by goalkeeper Devontae Houghton and his defender, Miles Hanna has gotten KFA back into this game. Must say, that is a poor goal to concede. Miscommunication at the back there. And here we have a replay for you. Ball played there over the top, and I thought Devontae Houghton could have come out for that a bit earlier. And perhaps Wesley could have said something to the goalkeeper just to order him around to come for it. But nevertheless, Houghton's indecision to come for that ball has cost not only him but the team. And the scores are now level at 1-1 with that man, Miles Hanna, scoring, leveling the scores here in the Elite Cup. And with just 27 minutes gone, we already have 2 goals. A great start to this year's competition. The KFC Elite League is yet again shaping up to be a great one. Ballaz Academy's opening goal scorer, James Harris, is on the ground, covering his face, hands on his head. Seems he probably caught an elbow there. But here we have again the replay of that goal. I'm not sure what the goalkeeper is thinking, really. He just needed to come for it. Poor judgment there. But unfortunately, I think that's something that's just going to have to come with experience. Lewis trying to find Hanna. Of course, just scored for KFA. Douglas. Oh, lovely skill there to beat his man, but fortunately loses out to Kevario White. And Kashinro trying to get Jackson off it, and he eventually does. But thankfully, Wesley is there to clear that upfield. Myers finds Campbell. Always looking to venture forward from left back. Kishinro. Jeremiah Hay. Must say, for a number 8, he's been poor on the ball. And that's the biggest thing for a midfielder, really, especially in his position. You're supposed to keep the play ticking, but he's lost the ball quite a lot today. He's going to have to work on his decision-making as well as his first touch. Perhaps just a bit of nerves. Obviously, as I said before, big boots to fill, considering Nikolai Banton was one of the premier midfielders in this competition last year. He's just going to have to settle down and really get into this game. Jair Hay. Hopefully he can stamp his class. Oh, lovely ball over the top. But a lovely clearance as well. Acrobatic one at that by Cristiano Myers. Of course, as mentioned before, one of the better centre-backs last season, along with his centre-back partner, Captain Jadine Morgan, who's, of course, absent. Good skill there by Kyle Husley. And gets that out wide to Tapper. Looking for Harris. Love the ball over the top. And it's going to get to him. However, the flag is raised quite quickly. And the free kick was taken. Not free kick, but resulting ball there was taken a bit too quickly for the referee's liking. And that will go all the way back to KFA to retake. Smith to Coke. And here's Myers on the ball. Of course, number of absentees apart from Morgan and Banton, now that I think about it. Romeo Henry as well, also unavailable today. Oh, lovely skill there. Good step over. And that comes off, I believe, Jeremiah Tapper. But the referee disagrees. And that will be a goal kick to Ballaz Academy. And as I mentioned before, there are a number of absentees apart from Banton and Morgan. Romeo Henry, who scored an absolute banger, a thunderbolt from probably 35, 40 yards out last season against Harbour View in a 1-0 victory. He's missing. And I believe they also have Jamon Lyle missing, but as to why he's missing, I guess we'll find out later today. Not spoiling the news for anybody who doesn't know as yet. Trying to stage a comeback here. Of course, not one of epic proportion. Lewis's corner, not the greatest, and that's easily cleared by Johnny Campbell. Poor pass to Thomas, who expressed frustration with the pass from Campbell there. Kishinro, who loses out there to Harris and comically grabs a hold of his shirt. Good little tactical foul there, and the referee calls back play yet again for another foul, this time on Kyle Hussey. Seems just a bit of, I wouldn't say petulance, but gamesmanship rather by both teams, really. Just trying to slow the game down in as friendly or competitive a way possible that doesn't boil over into the antics. Oh, lovely ball over the top by Kanye Douglas. He has that in him. And the cross is deflected, but it seems he caught Johnny Campbell, but the referee looks the other way. No penalty. Campbell was already provided a cross for a goal today. Cuts back. Bit of showboating here. Finally delivers the cross, and the accuracy not quite there. And that's cleared out for a throw-in. And here's the replay of that lovely ball over the top by Kanye Douglas into the path of Campbell. Cross, unfortunately, for Ballaz Academy, was to no avail, however. Nothing was coming to fruition from that. And Thomas's pass, believed to have been handled, but referee says no. Hannah trying to sweep that into the path of his teammate, but not able to get the power on it with him being on the ground, and KFA reclaim position. Oh, lovely pass there to break the line of the defense. Robinho Morgan's touch is a bit too heavy. The goalkeeper came out, and Kenil Jackson eventually gets it clear. Javier Coke did well there to pounce on a poor first touch by Robinho Morgan, making it an uncomfortable angle for him. And Coke still down, but here we have a replay of that chance. Coke came out there, and in the ensuing chaos, I thought Ballaz Academy did well to clear their lines. Kenil Jackson on hand to spare his goalkeeper's blushes. Robinho Morgan really could have made them pay there, but thankfully it wasn't too bad for them. Didn't end up conceding another goal. Coke, of course, still receiving some treatment. But just thinking about that chance, it's really been a back and forth game over the last 10 or 15 minutes. Just about 36 minutes gone, about 10 to go or so. And I have to say, at first, Ballaz Academy were having it their own way. KFA were yet to really get into the game, but I believe sparked by that goal coming from really unfortunate circumstances. A good bit of fortune coming their way via the mistake of Devontae Horton. And here we have the lineups for you for just the viewers who are unaware. Devontae Horton in goal, Delajahi McCormack, Kenil Jackson, Jeremiah Tapper, Kenny Douglas, Daniel Thomas, Ajani Campbell, Richard Clark, Kyle Hussey, Kamarli Wesley, and Jaheim Harris. As we mentioned before, Kenny Douglas captaining today. Daniel Thomas for some time was actually the captain last year. Seems a number of teams are going to be making changes this year as to their captaincy, as well as the players featuring in their starting lineup. Of course, a year would have passed, and some players, of course, would have been a year old and ineligible for this competition. Ooh, a poor mistake there. Hannah not able to guide it goalward. Almost another mistake from Ballaz Academy that could have led to a goal. And here we have the chance. Kanye Douglas, of all people, one of the persons that you'd least suspect to make a mistake like that, gives the ball away to Miles Hannah, who almost, for a second time today, made Ballaz Academy pay from a defensive error. But there's Jackson coming forward now, and that's deflected out for a throw-in by the shoulder of Rylan Campbell. But here's Clark, turns from the defender, foot and ball to the path of his teammate, but unfortunately wasn't able to meet it. And Thomas goes down. Strong tackle, but no foul. Kishinro, poor pass, and that's into the path now of Kyle Hussey. Trying to take on Demarin Smith, but leaves the ball behind him. And trying to beat him for pace afterwards, but unable to. Not the greatest of control there in that tight space by Hussey. And now we also have the Kingston Football Academy lineup. Javier Coke in goal, as mentioned before. Damarin Smith, Cristiano Myers, Rylan Campbell, Keyshawn Lewis, Jair May, Robinho Morgan, Kevario White, Kevon Adlam, Miles Hannah, and Zaim Kishinro. Just about 6 minutes to go in this one. And that's a poor pass from Kishinro. Shot from distance, but never really troubling the goalkeeper there. Kishinro again opting for a long pass. The accuracy not there on either of the two passes. Would have been better off looking for the easier option. And again, Ballaz Academy just sloppy build-up play. Taking a bit too many risks at the back there. And almost a mistake leading to a goal there from Kamarli Wesley, rather. Apologies for mispronouncing your name, young man. Wesley lost it over the top there. Some footwork in the corner there. Gets past his man. Cross comes in. No one on the end of it, however. And Thomas can retrieve on this right-hand side now. Opts for a cross. Looking for the head of Harris, who scored the first goal, of course. And Clark has a wild swing at it. And that goes wayward. And that will be a goal kick for Kingston Football Academy. Scores locked at 1-1 with just 5 minutes plus possible added time to go in this one. Jair Hay on the ball, got the pass off, but teammate was unable to retain possession. Eventually loses it, KFA, and Thomas is fouled. Tapper. Poor control, and that will be a throw in. Not the greatest first touch in the world there. Lukaku-esque, but nonetheless, he's young. He'll learn. Here's Myers. Lewis, just playing a bit deeper, trying to get some touches on the ball. Been a bit frustrating in this game so far. Cavalier White, definitely a player, as I said before, looking for him to assert himself more. Of course, he's playing deep, but still. Robinho Morgan, as his man 1v1, has a crack at it, but that is blocked valiantly by the Balla's defense. And Ryland going for a shot there, blocked, but deemed to have been fouled, and that will be a free kick to Kingston Football Academy, and they have a chance here to go from goal from about 25 yards out, and it seems Ryland Campbell will be the one to take this. Never really known him to be a set-piece specialist, but could surprise us with a goal here. Of course, he does have good technique, one of the better crosses in the competition last year. See what he has for us today. Been all over the pitch so far. Played left back predominantly last year, but seems he's been roaming all over and taking up central areas, especially where KFA have needed the help. Free kick, hits the wall, has another strike, and that's blocked again. Now here's Myers. Cavalier White again on the ball. Kishinro. White. Myers. Lewis. Oh, good turn by Hay, but unfortunately lost the ball. Not for the first time this morning, or this afternoon rather. Here's Kishinro. We love the pass around the corner there to the path of Robinho Morgan. Has a crack, and it's saved. And Devontae Houghton rather, almost spilling it into the path of Miles Hanna. He's made a number of mistakes today, and one of them was pounced upon by Hanna, which of course led to KFA's goal. He'll have to be more careful and just better with his hands. Is something that other teams could look to exploit the longer this competition goes on. Kenil Jackson trying a turn there and didn't really come off. Opting to try to find Harris early there, Kamarley Wesley, but pass wasn't on the money. And Morgan does well to find his teammate in space. He has Lewis out wide. First touch wasn't the best, but gets it to his teammate. And Hanna, his shot is blocked valiantly by Jackson. Here's Lewis. Spins, he turns. Cross comes in. Not met by a teammate, but nevertheless good creation there, good chance. And that was Campbell, I believe, not Lewis, however. And the referee blows for halftime here in the first game of the KFC Under-18 Elite League. First match day of the 2026 edition, of course. And Kingston Football Academy not necessarily picking up where they left off, but they did eventually start to look like them old selves again after a poor start, really, but I have to say, due to some fortunate means they have equalized through the boot of Miles Hanna and a defensive error by their goalkeeper, Ballaz Academy's goalkeeper, Devontae Horton. The score is currently 1-all, Ballaz Academy and Kingston Football Academy. And of course, we'll rejoin you right after the break. mental to how well they played last year. Of course, chief among them being captain Jadine Morgan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the live coverage here on MG Sports of the KFC Under-18 Elite League. Of course, the deadlock would have been broken in the 10th minute by Ballaz Academy through Jaheim Harris, but KFA were on hand to equalize thanks to a defensive error, costly error by goalkeeper Devontae Horton, and Miles Hanna of KFA was on hand to pounce up front today, of course, despite not necessarily being a regular starter last year. But here we are, and here's Morgan into the path of Kevon Adlam, a new addition to this team this year. Of course, stick around, folks. We'll be having another game coming up for you in the 3-game slate. The second game should start at around 2:30. That will be between Montego Bay United, of course, who their senior team currently leads the Jamaican Premier League, and they'll be coming up against last year's beaten finalists, Harbour View. Rubinho looking for Hanna, but that's cut out there by Jackson, who was stout defensively. A rather more assured performance than his centre-back partner, who of course is also new, that player being Kamarley Wesley. Adlam trying to shield the ball out there, but eventually loses out to Johnny Campbell, who caused a number of issues in the first half with this speed down that right-hand side. He switched over to the left in this game. Made some amazing runs. Oh, and KFA win the ball back high up the pitch. And now here's Rylan Campbell. Lovely turn to beat his man. Cross comes in towards Hanna. Couldn't quite connect with it. But here's Kishinro. Out wide to Morgan. Quiet first half, but he whips one in towards Hanna, and that's cleared by Jackson. Jackson, as I mentioned before, brilliant performance in the first half. Prevented a number of goal-scoring opportunities from entering the back of the net. Spared Horton's blushes on quite a number of occasions. Shot comes in, blocked. And that's cleared now. Here's Thomas on the ball. Looking for Hussey, but that will be easily dealt with by Javier Cook. Out wide now to Morgan. Oh, lovely turn there by Adlam. Trying to get it into Zaire Hay. Finds him eventually. Trying for the return pass, but that's won back by Kamarley Wesley. And Kishinra wins the ball back high up the pitch for KFA. Lovely run there by Hanna. Timed it well, but unfortunately didn't have the pace to capitalize on the pass there, and that will be a goal kick for Ballaz Academy, who started off really well in the opening minutes of the game. We're putting KFA under some amount of pressure, but as the game wore on, we saw Rylan Campbell just inverting and overloading the middle of the park, helping out Zaire Hay, who has struggled to replace Nikolai Banton this year, and just really helping out to overload the middle of the park, create those numbers, that numbers advantage, and KFA, as a result, started to get more possession on the ball and create a few more chances, in particular isolating out wide Keyshawn Lewis and Rubinho Morgan for those 1v1 opportunities with their fullbacks, and they were able to generate a number of crosses, especially on that left-hand side from Keyshawn Lewis, who had the beating of his fullback. A number of chances came from that left-hand side, and they'll be hoping for more of the same in this half. Ball over the top looking for Thomas, but that's headed away by Damarian Smith, who, of course, as I mentioned before, did actually venture forward quite a number of occasions, played up front last year and scored a couple of goals. So I have to say, it is a surprise to see him at centre-back today. But ball won back here by KFA. Finds Zaire Hay. And Hanna couldn't time his run well enough. Well, not necessarily the timing, but couldn't angle his run well enough in order to get onto that pass. And Ballaz Academy But again, KFA winning the ball high up the pitch. Something that they've added to their game as the game's worn on. They weren't really pressing. It was pretty much just Hannah up front by himself. But they've seemed to have found the energy needed to do so, and a more calculated, concerted effort in getting the press, especially in around the defensive area of Ballaz Academy, causing some panic in that back line. Ballaz Academy for sure definitely going to have to work on those passes out from the back, as well as the decision making, because sometimes it's not even the passes being intercepted, it's just making poor decisions on the ball in terms of holding on to it for too long, as well as poor first touches. But there's the corner coming in from Zaire Hay. Poor one, but he will have another attempt. Settles himself, composes. Cross comes in again towards the back post. No man there to lay claim to that. And Kivario White gets it out wide. Trying to find his man, but it's cleared away from Ballaz Academy. Cross comes in, and that will go out for a goal kick. Perhaps have been better off looking for a teammate in the middle of the park rather than going for the cross, but nevertheless, Ballaz Academy have the chance to now formulate an attack. Bit of a shaky first half, as I mentioned before, by debutant Kamarley Wesley, but he'll be looking for a better second half rather. Not been the greatest on the ball, and his decision making at times in terms of when to call for the pass or when to relieve pressure off his goalkeeper, not the best. And KFA have made them pay on that sloppy build-up play, of course, via that goal. Number of players moving forward, including Hay, who gets to it, and Richard Clark doing his defensive duties, wins the ball back, but puts it out of play. That will be a throw-in for KFA. On this right-hand side, Adlam will take the throw-in to Kivario White, captaining the team today in the place of course, the absent Jadine Morgan, who was stout at the back for KFA last year. One of the players of his position, one of the best players in his position last tournament. Delajahe McCormack with a throw in there. For those who remember, he was on the other end, the receiving end of one of the best individual performances last year. That coming through no other man than Franco Celestin, who was unbelievable last year. In my opinion, the player of the tournament was Miguel Joseph, but for those who watched Franco Celestin, he could so easily have made a case for that title of best player. And in my opinion, the only downfall to him not winning it for me over Miguel was really just the number of games played, because he was absolutely sensational despite only really playing 6 games in that tournament. And he did play the entirety of the playoffs, and boy was he something special in both games. Scored, of course, in the semi-final, the lone goal against Cavalier in what was a tight and feisty affair, but he also scored in the final as they claimed the title in a 2-0 victory over Harbour View, in which players from both teams got sent off. That was another feisty affair. Of course, as I mentioned before, Celestin was on the score sheet, but also Siobhan Byron. But as we return back to this game, could we see one of these two teams actually make the finals this time around? The KFA, of course, were looking like they could have the chance to, but they suffered a 3-0 beating against Harbour View in the semi-finals. Oh, lovely pass into the path of Miles Hanna. Oh, into the path of Robino Morgan. Poor goalkeeping. And KFA have staged a comeback. 2-1. A rather tame effort from Robino Morgan, but nevertheless, KFA will not care one bit. They are 2-1 up. Robino Morgan on hand there. Lovely build-up play. And here we have the replay for you. Ball out wide there. Passes it. Not the replay we were looking for, but nevertheless, there's a great movement there, great move. Good combination play between Hannah and I believe it was Lewis and White on that left-hand side. And eventually, Miles Hannah's pass found the way of Robinho Morgan, who made Devontae Horton pay. Lovely pass into the path of Harris, but good work there by Javier Cote to come for that one. Robinho Morgan, of course, as mentioned before, along with Keyshawn Lewis, one of the better players in his position as well. That duo was a big part of why KFA were so good in the regular league portion of the season, and definitely looking forward to more from both those young men again this time around. And he's put his team in front. Maybe not the most exciting of goals, but nevertheless, all that matters is that they scored. And Kyle Hussey been fouled there, and he's expressed his frustration with the nature of the foul. And KFA have a player down here. And of course, for those who remember that result, of course, in the semi-final last year came as a bit of a shock given the form KFA were on prior to that defeat. And of course, in my opinion, the deciding factor was the notable exclusion from the squad altogether of Nikolai Banton due to an injury he had picked up, and without arguably their best player from last season, they succumbed to that defeat, and their entire way of playing was just completely different from how it had been the entire season. And it was really a sad way to see a team that had played so well go out. Of course, this time around, they don't have him from the get-go, so they'll be looking to just establish themselves early on here in the season as the team to beat. Referee says play on. Now here's Lewis, who was amazing in that first half, but loses out there to Richard Clark. As I said before, playing a bit deeper than last year. Ball in towards Hannah, but Devontae Horton this time firm, two hands on it, and that will be the ball in the way of Ballaz Academy and Rajahi McCormack. Not with the requisite skill there to beat his man, and good cutout by Kishinro. Does well to retain position for KFA, and gets the return pass there from Adlam. Kishinro, good pass. Back to Zaire Hay. Oh, lovely skill there to beat his man. And the referee, I believe, probably just played advantage for KFA. But had Cavalier White not opted for that shot, which was eventually deflected quite easily into the path of Horton, the referee might have blown for a penalty. But nevertheless, there is no foul, and Zaire Hay remains down at the moment. He's calling for a substitution, actually. Or even if it's not a substitution, at the very least, some urgent medical attention. Just about an hour gone in this one. 30 minutes to go, of course, of regulation time, but we've had quite a game here, folks. Of course, as you can remember, Ballaz Academy taking the lead early in the first half through Jaheim Harris after Johnny Campbell's wonderful work down the right-hand side to beat his man and whip a crossing. And he pounced on a mistake by the defender, whose clearance wasn't quite a firm one. Wasn't the best of clearances, and Harris pounced on it and made KFA pay. But thankfully for KFA, Ballaz Academy made a mistake of their own, as Devontae Horton, not for the first time today, gave away a costly error. Miscommunication between him and his defender, and really just a lapse in concentration on his part, and ended up not coming for the ball, allowing Miles Hannah to pounce. And it seems that not only will Zaire Hay be replaced, actually it will also be making way, seems to be Kevon Adlam, who on his debut did give a good account of himself. And the two new substitutions for KFA will make way. They will come onto the pitch, rather. Also making a way onto the pitch would be Ballaz Academy. They are making a substitution, and seems to be the shortest player on the pitch. Let's see what he has, though. Now it's Kishinero. Trying to get that all the way through to the substitute there. The number 6 Lee McCoy, who did play last year. I definitely remember him. We substitute today. However, this time around.
Why not go just switch the ball to Tina now? Switch! Switch the ball over, just come from over there and switch the ball over. Same up, black. So give somebody who could have switched it then.
Ballaz Academy. 2-1 down.
Jump up. Hey, Riley.
Ryland Campbell. It's passing. His namesake. Lovely pass there to the path of McCoy. Cameron, who also made his way onto the pitch recently. Here's Thomas with a chance for a counter-attack. Trying to play that into the path.
Run!
Not able to.
That turn is too easy.
Smith there.
No, cut our man. Shoot the Zalim. Well done, my side. Runs.
Number of options. Bides his time and now finds Cavario White. Cuts inside. Ups for a shot. And curls, but curls wide. High and wide. And that will be a goal kick for Ballaz Academy.
What's left?
That high free kick of the game today. Pass squeezed through to Cavalier White. Zaire Hay out wide to McCoy. Cuts in, unleashes, and that shot goes wide. Good effort, but never really able to dip into that front corner as he wanted. But nevertheless, the intent was there. 2-1 currently the score, as mentioned before, here in the second half. Smith eventually claims good turn from Kishinro, who's been, for my money, arguably the best player today. Lovely turns, good skill there by White, just to feint out his defender by time, find space, and here's Morgan. Another player who could make a case for that title of best player on the pitch. We'll see, of course, when the time comes for that match poll. Ball's cleared there, only as far as Malik Cameron, and the referee eventually blows, and that will be a free kick. And we just take a short break here. Again, as you mentioned before, it's not the coolest of conditions, and temperatures rather high here. Stark contrast to what we've been experiencing on this side of the island, well, every side of the island lately. Of course, the well-known cold front, a thing of the past now. Rising temperatures today, and can't say it hasn't been great for the game today. But of course, we want the players to be hydrated, want them to stay safe, and of course, as such, they'll be taking a number of breaks throughout these games, including this current water break. As mentioned before, KFA finished in the top 4 last year, getting them automatic playoff position, and they were one of the most dominant teams last year, securing that number 3 spot, I believe, on the table. And played some amazing football, a number of different players who contributed in terms of goal scoring going forward and chance creation, and they've retained a number of those players this year. But of course, Jamon Lyle, the notable exclusion this time around up front. We'll be hoping they can depend on other players in other areas. And of course, as mentioned before in the first half, Tyler Falconer is one such player that could make that impact, but he's on the bench. Of course, in his place is Miles Hanna, who, of course, last year was not a regular starter, but he's taken his chance that he's gotten today, and he's gotten on the score sheet. Rather fortuitous one, but they all count nonetheless. McCormack trying to play it into Clark, eventually does. Ooh, gets past his man, but eventually loses control, and that's cleared by Campbell. Now here's Jackson trying to find Tapper. Cross not accurate, and Kivario White plays it into his man. Kishinro gets it out wide to Morgan. Booted downfield towards Hanna, who loses out on the header to Jackson. Douglas, not the greatest first touch in the world, and he loses out there in the other duel to Kivario White, who gets it out wide now to Kishan Lewis, but play is called back for a foul there on the number 10 Kivario White, and the yellow card will go to Ballaz Academy's skipper Kanye Douglas. Play resumes here from the free kick. Cristiano Myers out wide to Campbell. just settling down the play here. He's patient. He's grown. He's really matured as a player. You can see it, but the pass there, the accuracy wasn't the best. But nevertheless, you can already see the patience that he's playing with. A bit rushed in his play sometimes, given that he was playing fullback last year. It was all action. Just playing a bit more controlled, and that has to do with the fact that he's playing more in the middle of the park this year. But nevertheless, they're going to be looking for more accuracy than that on his passes. Javier Coke was calling for his player, Damarian Smith, to leave the ball for him there, but Smith probably didn't hear him, or if he did, deliberately disobeyed his goalkeeper. But lovely tackle in the middle of the park from Kishinro there. Another big contribution for him, and a wonderful pass there into the path of McCoy. He has Jackson 1v1, who has been sensational in those situations in this game. And here's Cavario White, has time and space, has a crack! Oh, it's hit the bar! Miles Hanna can't capitalize, and Johnny Campbell gets it clear for Ballaz Academy. But now, here's Campbell, strike from distance! And can't get it on target over the bar, and that will be a goal kick to Ballaz Academy. KFA supplying the pressure now, trying to get that third goal. Johnny Campbell goes to ground. Perhaps a bit of a tactic just to relieve the pressure that they've been feeling over the last 5 to 10. Coach Fabian Davis just, of course, barking orders at his team, upset with how they've been playing. And rightfully so, almost gave away a goal there. Of course, can't really say anything about the effort there from Cavario White. That was just a spectacular strike and really could have ended up in the net from a distance that you can only just say well done from. But they really should have defended better prior to that. Of course, it could also be argued in Davis's case that somebody should have closed down White. Had a bit too much space, probably for his liking. Campbell still down there, just a bit of cramp, but nonetheless, we just be turning back our attention again to the events of last season. We can make mention of some of the other teams that participated, including Cavalier, who are not participating this year. They've been replaced by Portmore United, who will be playing against Mount Pleasant later. But here's just the effort again. Rylan Campbell had a goal from distance following Cavario White's shot right before that. However, Campbell not able to get it goalward, not able to get it on target rather, and score remains 2-1 to KFA. But they are looking like the team most likely to get another goal here. But lovely move there by Campbell to get past his man, and Kyle Hussey tripped up there for the foul to Ballaz Academy. Hussey's actually still on the ground, hand on his face, and the referee is signaling for some urgent medical attention for Hussey. Of course, they are younger players, so you'd expect them to succumb more to some soft tissue injuries and muscle problems that perhaps you wouldn't necessarily see with some of the older, fitter, stronger players. But as I mentioned before, was a change in terms of team, in terms of this 2026 edition of the Elite Cup. Cavalier have been replaced by Portmore. Of course, Cavalier were beaten semi-finalists last year, played an amazing game against Mount Pleasant. They lost 1-0, unfortunately for them, but they gave a good account of themselves. And of course, for those who watched Cavalier's most recent game in the Jamaican Premier League against Spanish Town Police FC, of course, where I was commentating, Damarley Williams, who played in the Elite Cup last year, was fantastic in that game, made his debut off the bench, had some nice touches and scored. And of course, it warms my heart to see stuff like that, because that is really what this competition is about, is providing a platform for these youngsters to really go on and strut their stuff in the big leagues. And we've seen a number of players actually do that this season that played last year. And Morgan gets the ball back into Hay, gets past his man again, McCoy rather, and he scores from the most unlikely of angles. I thought that was about to be a cross, but Zaire Hay, I have no idea really just how he's managed to squeeze that in there. Kakamari McCoy, the substitute, making an impact here for his coach. And with 14 minutes to go, and Ballaz Academy finding themselves 2 goals down, they're going to need some urgent goals here immediately. They are in danger of succumbing to a loss on the first day of this competition. They started off so well, of course, taking the lead, and not just taking the lead, but they were playing pretty well. But some notable tactical tweaks by the KFA coach, Eric Radamakas, and as a result, they've had control the whole way through since and have not relinquished it. And here we have a replay of the celebration, but not necessarily the goal. There we have it. And there's a lovely turn there by Morgan, supplying it into the path of McCoy. And McCoy somehow saw that the goalkeeper wasn't protecting his near post and was able to squeeze it into the tightest of angles. And that made it 3-1 to KFA. That lofted pass there by Kamarley Wesley, not the greatest there. There's Morgan. Has McCoy 1v1. Ups for the shot! And it goes just over the bar. That's the second time today that he's had a similar chance where he's cut in on his left after beating his man, McCoy. Of course, just scoring that third goal as we saw the replay. Morgan almost adding a fourth. Another player down here. This time for KFA. And of course, there are a number of substitutions going to be made here again. 3 new ones for KFA. And play resumes. Of course, KFA perhaps just sensing that with 10 minutes to go plus possible stoppage time, they're almost certain of a result if it stays. They've made actually a minute to go, rather 40 minutes and a half, not 45. So just about 6 minutes to go, I should say, plus possible at a time. We've sensed that this game is probably wrapped up and made a couple of substitutions to protect their players, which, given some of the challenges so far today, this is a wise decision. Is Connie Douglas still going, and eventually is blocked there by Damarian Smith. Connie Douglas went on a crazy run there a while ago, twisting and turning, beating a couple of players, still retaining possession, unable to get a goal out of it, but they'll be hoping they can get one here. Daniel Thomas going over quickly to take. They only have a few remaining minutes, 5 to be exact, plus possible at a time, to get some consolation here. Hussey trying to supply the cross, but not able to get it through there. Lays it off. Oh, and he's through here. He has numbers. And he's offside. Poor there. Dominic Clark couldn't keep himself onside, but a number of bodies forward there for KFA, including Deshaun Jones, and that's a good save there. Good shot rather, but that will go out. Of course, he's a goal scorer, Kakamari McCoy. Deshaun Jones into the goal scorer, McCoy. Out wide. Can cut inside. He does. Has a go, and that's blocked. Good clearance there by the debutant. Tyler Faulkner, in my opinion, came on a bit late for my liking, but nevertheless wasn't needed today. Result was secured in time without his services. As a goal, Kishinru trying his luck there from quite some distance, but thankfully for Ballaz Academy, that was blocked. Thomas again going down here. Has a goal, and the referee will be signaling for just some attention to Daniel Thomas, who still on the ground, and I opted not really to comment on that shot because someone once told me that if you don't have anything good to say, don't say it at all. Thomas, of course, one of the better players in the competition last year, but it could definitely be a return of some issues that plagued him last year, not necessarily injury related, but things that could cause injury, such as just being a bit too frail for my liking. He's gonna have to get some amount of muscle. Doesn't have to be large amounts. He's probably even grown some bit, but not enough really to cope with the demands of the professional game, which he's of course going to want to break into. We've seen a number of players do just that and made their start in this competition. Players such as Peyton Larman, the aforementioned names of Franco Celestin and Michael Joseph. We've also had Tyreek Robinson play for Harbour View last year. A number of players that were in this competition last year got their break, and of course as well Damarley Williams, who scored on Sunday against Spanish Town Police FC. Oh, poor mistake there, but Ballaz Academy yet again not able to find the telling touch in the final third, and the game with just a minute to go petering out here, and as expected, not much to really observe really when you know the result. And Faulkner gets it into Clark, trying to get it to White, but good clearance there. Oh, lovely bit of skill there by Dilajahi McCormack. The nutmeg his man, gets past Malik Cameron, trying to cross it into the path of Richard Clark, but dealt well with there by Clark, who recovered well, and that will be a corner kick and perhaps the last meaningful action really of the game. But right before this corner kick is taken, we'll have a substitution for Kingston Football Academy, and most likely the last of the game. Corner now to be taken by Ballaz Academy. Possibly the last kick of the game here. But can they at least salvage some sort of consolation goal? Something for their fans to leave home with. Corner taken, and that is claimed quite comfortably by Javier Cook. Booted downfield, looking for Deshaun Jones. Kenny Douglas, twisting and turning, eventually gets past his man. And my apologies, it was not 40 minutes, it is 45 indeed. Poor pass by Douglas. And given that it is the regular 45 a half, there are 4 to go still in this one. Plus, of course, possible added time. And just a reminder for the folks at home, stay tuned, because of course here on MG Sports we are covering a 3-game slate today of this competition, the KFC Under-18 Elite League. And the second game that we have coming up for you will be Montego Bay versus Harbour View. Of course, Harbour View, as previously mentioned, beaten finalists last year against Mount Pleasant. And of course, Montego Bay were rooted at the bottom of the league, but for those who actually watched the games and weren't just paying attention to the results, they'll know that despite that fact, they definitely gave a good account of themselves in some of those games, and especially towards the back end of the season as they got more of their players that they actually want in the team. They gave some amazing performances and were rather unlucky or rather unfortunate not to get the results they would have hoped for in some of those games. Came out very unfortunate, and despite that, they still had a number of players who really shone there, really shone. In my opinion, one of them being Najani Blair in goal. For me, the best goalkeeper of that tournament. I know the award eventually went to Damaria Harewood, who was, for me, second. But in my opinion, based on defensive record whenever he played, as well as his amazing performances to sometimes just win the game on his own or salvage a point on his own for his team, it had to be, for me, Najani Blair. He was the biggest difference maker in goal last season. The acrobatics on the young man were just simply outstanding, making some seemingly superhuman saves, reminiscent of Ochoa from Mexico in the World Cups gone by. But also must make mention of Javon Anglin, who was sensational towards the back end of that campaign. Only played a couple of games, about 3 or 4, due to some issues, but nevertheless, when he did play, he showed himself to be one of the players with the most promising futures ahead of him. The pace, the skill, the build, all causing problems for his defenders. But it's Deshaun Jones. Tyler Faulkner got past his man, and that will be a free kick for KFA in a dangerous area, right outside the penalty area. And who knows, they could add a 4th here just to really put the icing on the cake, give something to their fans to smile about once more. Could even come up with an intricate set play here, right out of the training ground. Free kick here to be taken. Stands over it. Taken and saved. Again, it has been spilled by Devontae Horton. And a 4th has been added, this time by Dominic Clark. Substitutes Faulkner and Clark combining for that one. And again, folks, I have to say it. I hate to, but I have to say it. It's at least 3 of the goals, at least 3, have been down to poor handling of the ball by Devontae Horton. Really poor from him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is full time. The score is, at the end of this one, the first game of the KFC Under-18 Elite League, the 2026 edition. Ballaz Academy 1, Kingston Football Academy 4. Of course, just a reminder to turn your attention now to the second game of our 3-game slate today. Montego Bay United will be taking on here at the Anthony Spalding Sports Complex Harbour View in the next game. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Over to the next game.